Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Autodesk Virtual Academy. My name is Anthony Rodriguez, Vice President of KETIV. I'm joined by Nathan Eliason and James Pavia, who are two of our senior technical experts focused on Fusion Lifecycle. I want to welcome everyone for joining and give everyone a background of Autodesk Virtual Academy, which we started about 2 years ago. In the 2 years we started with the goal of focusing on delivering content that users can go back, implement, use within their workflow. We've grown the Academy to more than 2,000 users. We have people that participate not just in the US, but all over the world. And every week we have sessions that focus on 3 different categories. Today you're participating in our newest version of the Academy, which is on Fusion Lifecycle. We started with product design and manufacturing collection, and also have a track for Fusion 360. You're all welcome to join any of these sessions. We encourage every user that's on this session today to comment and share with us topics that you'd like to learn in the future. This is something we'll be doing consistently. It's something that will happen on a regular basis, and it will focus on delivering content that you can go back and use. The session's not to pitch a new product or pitch new technology. It's really to help our users adopt and make the most out of the investment they made, in this case, Fusion Lifecycle. So again, I want to welcome everyone. I welcome you to the community. I encourage you to participate in any of the tracks that are relevant to you. Definitely participate in providing input on topics that can help your user base, help people within your company, and we'll be glad to implement those as we continue to do this consistently. Nathan today, who's going to present with James, has picked a topic that we feel is relevant to every user within a Fusion Lifecycle implementation, something that every one of your users can benefit from. All of the sessions will be recorded and posted on YouTube and Facebook. So even if some of your users aren't able to participate live, we encourage you to have them go back and watch these recordings. Again, I'm excited to get this started. I'm going to hand it over to Nathan. I want to thank everyone for joining again. I hope we hear from more of you more frequently, and that all of us benefit from this and use Fusion Lifecycle to its maximum potential. Nathan?
All right, thank you, Anthony. So I want to give you an overview for what we're going to cover on today's call. First of all, I want to give you an overview of what Workspace views are all about. Then we're going to demonstrate and actually show you how you can personalize and customize the Workspace view so that you can quickly find the information that you are looking for. And then at the very end of our session today, we're going to do a Q&A session. So, just some housekeeping real quick. If during the presentation you want to ask any questions, inside of the GoToWebinar interface, there's a place where you can type in your questions. James is going to be managing that, and so he will get back with you if you have any questions throughout the presentation. Some of them we might save to the very end, and we might bring up to the whole audience. So Workspace views inside of Fusion Lifecycle, whenever you want to view information in a workspace, when you navigate to the workspace, this is the view that comes up, and that's what's called our Workspace view. It has several columns of information that you can display. You can filter information, you can sort the information, and what's even more important is when you find a view that is very helpful for you, you can actually save that view, and you can have as many different saved views as you want, and that way you can quickly find information that you're looking for. Now, when you have hundreds or thousands of different records in a database or in a workspace, it's very helpful to know how to do this so that you can quickly find the information you're looking for. So you may or may not be aware, but over the past couple of years, Autodesk has been migrating Fusion Lifecycle from the old UI, which is shown on the left side of the screen. We refer to that as the classic interface. And they've been migrating over to the new user interface, which we call the modern interface. And you can see there are some subtle differences here. The workflow is quite a bit different, especially when it comes to personalizing the workspace views that we're going to be reviewing today. So to help cover both of these old UI and the new UI way of personalizing workspaces, we're actually going to cover both of those workflows. So first, what I want to do is I want to talk about and address the classic interface. So from the main menu, when you're in the classic user interface, to get to the workspace views, from the main menu, you pick the type of workspace that you're looking for, and then you click on the specific workspace that you want to view. So in today's presentation, we're going to be using this items and bills workspace that you can see highlighted on the screen. Now, when you click on that workspace, it's going to take you to the workspace view. And in the classic interface, there's this little pencil icon that will be very important. This pencil icon will let you either edit the existing view or create a new view. So here in this box, you can see right here on the left, it shows all of the different fields of data that we have in Fusion Lifecycle. And you can click on any of those and bring them over to the showing column. And this showing column, this is a list of the different fields that are showing inside of my workspace view. So you can see we have the item descriptor, we have the lifecycle, and we have the release letter. Now we can also add filters. So if we look at the bottom of this edit view dialog, here I can access any of the fields that I have inside of my workspace, and I can tell it what I want that value to be. And we can have one set of filters, you can have no filters, you can have 20 filters if you want. So this is where you put that type of information in the classic user interface. Then when I find a view that I like and that I'm happy with, we can go ahead and save that here. And again, like I mentioned, if you have 10 different views that you like to see, depending on what you're doing, all of those will be readily accessible, and you can click on those and it will bring up the relevant columns of data. It will bring them up filtered appropriately, and that way you can quickly access the data that's important to you. So we're going to go ahead now, and I'm going to bring up the classic interface. And you can see here we're on our home screen. And again, I go to the main menu. In our case today, the workspace view is for any workspace, by the way. It's not just items and bombs, but that's just the one that we're going to be using for our demonstration. So when I navigate to the workspace view, again, you can see that my 3 columns are item descriptor, lifecycle, and release letter that come in this default view. Let's go ahead and quickly add a new view. And this view we're going to call our demo view. Now, if you'll notice, by default, this is a brand new view, so I have to start telling it all of the different columns that I want. So we like these 3 initial columns. So I'm first going to bring over my item descriptor. And to do that, notice I can just click it and then click this little button, and it will move it over to my columns. And then I'm going to scroll down, and we're going to pick a couple of these lifecycle ones. So you can see here I want my lifecycle. This time I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to drag it across. So you can see that there's a couple different ways I can bring them over. And then the release letter we're going to bring over into our columns as well. So now I have columns that are similar to this default view. But now what I want to do is I want to add a couple of more columns. I'm going to go ahead and add our description and our unit of measure. So now when I click save, I'm going to have this new view that we created called demo. And you're going to see that I have these 5 columns of data. Now, at this point, I can click on any of these headers and notice that it will sort information by clicking on any of those headers. So I can go ascending order, I can go in descending order, but you can see that very quickly you can sort the information by clicking on the column heading. Now let's say, for example, I wanted my description, my unit of measure columns to come before my life cycle and my release letter columns. If I go back to my edit view dialog, I can simply drag these columns to the right, or these fields to the right location in the order I want them to appear. And now when I click save, it's going to reorder those columns for me. So very easy to go in and get the data in the order that I want it to appear. Now let's look at, you'll see that I have 1,466 records, and you can see that each one, I have 2 records. I have a production and I have a working version. We only want to show release data. So the first filter I'm going to add is we're just going to go down here and say we only want to look at the latest versions. So now when I click save, notice that we're going to go from 1,466 records down to 733 records, and I no longer have those working versions. Let's say though that you can see some of these have descriptions that are blank. Most of our parts do have descriptions. So let's say that we also want to exclude any description that is blank. So if I come up here, I can add a new filter, and we'll just go down to the description, and notice that we have the different options. Does it just contain certain letters or certain keywords? Does it start with, end with certain letters or characters? There are several different options that we have. We just want to say the description is not blank. And now when I click save, we're going to go from 733 records down to 671 records. And if I scroll down here, you'll notice that there are now no more records showing that have blank descriptions. Now we'll also notice that I have some obsolete records in here. And when I'm looking for parts, I really don't want to see parts that are obsoleted. So we're going to, again, go back and we're going to add yet another filter. And this time we're going to say that the life cycle is in production. And now when I save that, now if I scroll down, you'll see that I have no more obsolete parts or records that are showing. And then finally, just to show another type of option that you might have, if you just want to focus on very specific part numbers, notice that the way we set up our part numbering scheme, we have just consecutive numbers that start with 1000. So here we can just say we want our descriptor to start with 100. We'll try 04. And now when I click save, we go from 664 records down to just 6 records. So it's very powerful the way that you can set the criteria that you want and then filter so that you only see the information that's relevant for what you're trying to do. Now, one last little note, if I want, what I can do is if I want my demo view to be the default view that comes up every time I navigate to this specific workspace, I can click this checkbox and that will then make it the default view. So now let's talk about the modern interface. And like I mentioned, over time, you'll need to be migrating over to the modern interface. Right now, you have the option that you can choose which one you want to use. But I do recommend that if you have it available to you, that you start using the modern interface so that you become used to it. So in the modern interface, we have this main menu icon. And when you click on this main menu icon, you'll have a list of different options. And you want to select the workspace option. Then from there, you can pick the category of workspace that you want to access. Again, in our example, we're going to be using the product development workspace. And then you can go and we're going to be using the items and bills just like we did inside of the classic interface. Now, just like before, when you go to your workspace view, it's going to show different columns. Here's where it gets really different between the classic interface and the new modern interface. So instead of having that pencil icon that lets us go in and continuously edit and refine and change our view, there's a whole set of tools that are more intuitive that make it easier to personalize and configure the workspace to find the information you're looking for. First of all, to select the data fields, there's a little column button in the upper right corner. And when you click on this button, it shows the columns that are currently being showed up top. And if I uncheck any of these, it will remove those columns from my view. And then it has the additional available columns categorized so you can quickly expand and unexpand the different options to quickly find the information that you want to display. So it's a little bit more intuitive, a little easier to choose the columns that you're looking for and bring them into your view. Now, from the filtering perspective, there is more powerful filtering in the modern user interface. You can basically pick on any of these columns that are showing, and you can see this little filter icon. When you click on that filter icon, it brings down a list of different options that you have on ways that you can filter out that column. And I can filter out as many different columns as I want. And what's nice too is that I can create and or complex searches or filters so that we can be a lot more complex in the type of data that it's filtering and the information that it's showing to us. And then finally, with our saved views, you can see that we have our view list over here. And next to a default view, or any view for that matter, you have these three little dots that will show up when your cursor hovers over that. And that lets you either rename the current view, duplicate it if we want to create a new view, or delete the current view. So that's basically how we're going to create a new view. We're going to duplicate an existing view, and then we're going to start modifying it and making changes on how we want our view to appear. So here in the modern interface, just as I showed in the previous slide, we have this top menu button that I can click. We can tell it we want to look at our product development workspaces. And as I move to that workspace, you can see that it pulls up the view. And just like before, I have this default view that has these three different columns. Now, I want to change this view without affecting my default view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come right in here. I'm going to click on these three little dots, and we're going to tell Fusion Lifecycle to duplicate this view. Then we're going to rename it to be our new demo view, similar to the one that we created before in the classic interface. Now, in our new view, as I mentioned, to add additional columns, we click on our column select button, and we come down and we want to add a couple of item details columns. So you can see it's literally as simple as clicking a button to check a couple of boxes. And then when I click save, those columns will now be added to my view. Now it's going to go ahead and add those at the end, but just like before, I can reorder those columns if I want. The way that I reorder those columns is I click on the column header right here in the empty space, and then I just click and drag it to the location that I want it to move to. Okay, for some reason it's not working right now. But you are able to drag those around, and they should move to the order that you want them to show. Now, just like before, the description, you can see right here that it's blank. We have several description information that are blank. So just like before, we can click on this button to filter, and we're going to say, let's hide the records that are not blank. And as soon as I click save, again, we're going to go from our 733 records down to 671. For some reason, my view isn't working right. I'm going to, I don't know what's going on here. Let me go back to my home. Let me go back to my workspace. And we're going to go back to our demo view. There we go. And now our workspace is working. Okay, and you can see now I can click on these column headers, and I can move them over, and I can start moving them around and ordering them the way that I want them to appear. Now, just like before, we also want to hide these obsolete parts. So again, we can click on our filter, say we want this to equal production. We don't want to show anything outside of production. And again, now we go from our 671 records down to our 664 records. And you can see that we no longer see our obsolete parts. And then finally, I want to come in and we're going to filter out some of our part numbers. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say starts with, just like we did before, 10004. But then I'm going to go ahead and add another filter. And we're going to say, or if it starts with 10010. And it's important to change this to an or. And now when I click save, you'll see that we go from 664 records down to 15. And you can see that all of our part numbers start with either 10004 or 10010. Now, as I mentioned, it's already saved. If I want this to be my default, then I can just click on that star. And when I click on that star, that now becomes my default view. So it makes it very easy to switch back and forth. I want to point out, if I go back to my default view, notice it goes back to only showing 3 columns, and it has all 733 records showing. And if I go back to demo view, again, now it's going to show just the 15 records with the 15 records with the 5 different columns that we wanted to show. So it makes it very easy to save your views, have them appear the way that you want them to appear. Now, before we close today's session, I did want to show you a couple of interesting tips when you're doing this. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck release letter and lifecycle. And I'm going to go to my where used, and we're going to show parent, assembly, and quantity. Now, when I click save, again, notice that we're at 15 records right now. When I click save, it's actually going to increase to 19. Okay. There we go. It's going to increase to 19 records. And the reason for that is notice that some of these part numbers are shown twice. And that's because they're used in 2 different assemblies. So here, if I want to get a quick where used report of several different top-level assemblies without having to go into each individual record, I can do that really conveniently. And I can see all of the different assemblies where it's used. And I can even see how many parts are used in each of those assemblies. Alternatively, what we can do is I'm going to turn off the where used now, and I'm going to go to the bill of materials. And if we pick our part and quantity, then now what's going to happen is we're going to have probably about 140 hits or so, 147. And again, you can see right here, we have several different entries for each assembly, and it's showing you all of the different parts and their quantities, at least from a top level assembly. So if we wanted to go in here and real quickly look at a different assembly's bill of materials, again, without having to go into individual records and pulling those, there are ways that we can do that right here inside of our workspace views. So I appreciate all of you, again, attending our inaugural AVA that is focused on Fusion Lifecycle. We hope that you're able to learn something about how you can personalize the workspace view and more easily find that information that you're looking for. At this point, I want to go ahead and field any questions that anyone might have. James, has there been any questions that have come in through the board?
Yes, there have, Nathan. I've got a couple of questions that I thought would be interesting if we shared them amongst everybody. One person asked how we can switch between the two as you're showing the two. Is there a possibility to switch between the two?
Yes, thank you. Great question. So what you can do is an administrator has the ability to go in and give the users an option on which one they want to use. And if they give you the option, you can come up here to your profile and you can click on My Account. And on My Account, if you scroll down, you'll see an option for the interface style. Now, in my case, the administrator has it locked down that everybody in this tenant has to use the modern interface. But if the administrator gives end users the option, then this will allow me to select which option I want to use. Now, if you are an administrator and you want to find out how you can give people the option to do that, you can come into the general settings, and down here there'll be an interface style. And again, this area can only be accessed by the administrators. And you can click right here. Do you want to force everybody to use classic? Do you want to force everyone to use modern? Or do you want to give users the option? So there's several different ways that we can allow you to select. Do you want to use modern, or do you want to use the classic interface? Wonderful question. Were there any others?
Yeah, I just got one other one. Somebody is saying they don't see all the view options. It's not the same. I could probably answer that. It's basically based on permissions. So if you don't have permissions to see something, then you won't see it in the view. So again, it's an administrative thing based on your permissions. So if you need to see something like life cycles or other options in the view, then you'll need to see your administrator to get those permissions.
Awesome. Well, again, we appreciate all of you joining us for our webcast today. We're going to be doing these monthly moving forward. And so we encourage you to sign up for the series and to join us next time when we'll go over some more tips and tricks, and we'll be announcing our next webcast shortly. So thank you, everyone, and hope you have a great rest of your day.